Hi, I'm Lilian, and my parents hate my gender. I'm not making up, it's true. Once I found a letter from my parents. They wrote they wanted a boy badly and were very sad when a girl was born. They hoped to have a son in the future, but soon after giving birth to me, it turned out mom couldn't have children anymore. And now imagine that attitude my family shows to me. Whenever I do, good or bad, there is zero reaction from mom and dad. At the same time, they constantly say they love me, but their faces are like stone. Despite all this, I adore my parents, and I've been trying to win their love since I was a little girl. I even started dressing as a boy and behaving accordingly. My peers nicknamed me a lesbian tomboy for this and stopped talking to me, but I don't care. I even changed my class to a cadet one to wear the military uniform all the time. It helped emphasize and I had masculinity too. But this failed to invoke any emotions in my parents as well. I was the same empty spot for them as before, even when I graduated from school with honors. I knew where to go next, surely to a military academy. I proudly announced this to my parents, but they replied that a girl should better do something else. They said this with their usual emotionless faces. Hey, I'm actually doing this for you. Then I really felt desperate. What should I do to have their love, which I lack because of one tiny chromosome? Stop. What if I correct the nature and have what I don't? But of course, I just need to change my gender. I ran to the computer to read more about it. In several hours of searching, I found a private forum where girls who wanted to change their gender communicated. There were those who'd done it already too. I wrote in the profile I wanted to make the transition, and puff, the access was opened. I immediately wrote a post, and soon someone called Murphy replied. He was married before his transition and was ready to meet me and tell me everything about it. When I saw Murphy in the cafe, I was just astonished. He looked like a natural guy. Wow! Could it be I'd become someone like him one day? Am I even ready for this? But no, I won't retreat. It turned out the first step was to visit a psychiatrist and prove I wasn't crazy, that I was doing this consciously and really saw this life like a man. Damn it! The doctor would expose me right away. I was no lesbian, I didn't feel like a guy or live like one, except the clothes I was wearing. Murphy agreed to help me out with this. In a park he taught me how to walk like a man, to wring clothes the right way, to sit with the knees spread wide and so on. Oh my goodness, how many tiny details! The psychiatrist questioned me for a long time and was terribly worried. She asked such awful questions I could burn from shame. But I tried to endure this and to underline my masculinity as much as possible. And then she asked about my relationships with girls. I shuddered. Murphy and I hadn't discussed this. Then the doctor was called to the corridor. That was my chance. I called Murphy and he said what to reply. Thank you, friend. Soon I had the doctor's conclusion. The next stage was the hormone therapy. Damn, sometimes it seems I'm not ready for this at all. Soon I'll grow a mustache, my voice becomes deeper, I'll be more muscular and turn into Murphy. And I can't even consult with my parents. It was meant to be a surprise. One day I'll come as a boy already and say, now call me Liam, not Lilian, I'm your son. They'll be ecstatic. This encouraged me and I headed to the clinic. Murphy was waiting near the entrance. He promised to support me and be near. Thanks, friend. We headed to the doors, but he suddenly blocked my way and stared at me. Hey, what are you doing? Murphy said this was no joke. This step was for the ones who really wanted to become a man, who felt like a man and couldn't imagine living differently, and my motivation was rubbish. What do you know about it? You'll never understand what it's like being an empty spot for your parents, what it's like to be the best, to do your best, and all in vain just because you were born a girl, not a boy. Have your parents smiled at you? And mine are robots, all right. And now get lost. I'll better go there without you. The doctor talked to me and then chose the hormones and gave me the first dose herself. I returned home absolutely happy. Now I really reached the point of no return. Soon I'll finally be able to tell everything to my parents and to show them what they wanted to see. Then the door flung open and Mom and Dad ran inside. They cried in unison, "What gender transition? You are crazy!" Murphy entered after them. "Oh, you traitor! He'll get some now!" But my parents didn't let me reach him. They embraced me and claimed we all needed to talk seriously. We dropped down to the kitchen and my parents made a shocking confession. It turned out that Mom and Dad's brains were not working the same way as in all other people. The part responsible for emotions wasn't functioning. So was it joy or sadness? Their faces remained neutral. There were many such persons on Earth. They even had a special community on the web where they chatted and met each other. My parents met exactly like this. The mutated genes usually are inherited by girls. That's why mom and dad wanted a boy so badly. But luckily, I was born healthy, and they decided to keep their secret. Murphy said something too. It turned out he'd always been a guy but wanted a girl with masculine features, so he went to that forum. Not everyone dares to make the transition, and they later start traditional families. And when he failed to change my mind, he came to my parents and told them everything. Need I to say I was shocked? If only I knew all this from the very beginning. If I knew it was all my parents' brains, I'd never enter a cadet class, wear male clothes, or apply for the military academy. Not to say anything about the transition. I hope the hormone therapy can be stopped without irreversible consequences. What if I grow a mustache? How awful! Seems the problems have just multiplied. Did you like this video? Subscribe and give us a like. Support the channel. Thank you.
The orderlies were holding my hands tightly to the operating table, and the surgeon was already administering anesthesia. I tried to pull away, shouting, "I don't want to be a girl, wait!" But I was blacking out, and it was all my parents' fault. We were never a rich family, because even before I was born, Dad lost all his money in the casino. When Mom found out about this and realized that a child would be raised in poverty, her sick heart could not stand it. She fell seriously ill. Despite this, Mom always tried to give me the best. While Dad was looking for a part-time job, she was there. So I decided I couldn't bear to see her suffer. I would earn a lot of money and help my parents get out of poverty. And the first thing I needed was to pay our debts. As soon as I finished school, I decided to go to the factory. They paid well, and no education was required. But when I went to the boss and explained that I wanted to work for him, he suddenly laughed in my face and said, "They did not need such frail, effeminate boys." It was like I was slapped in the face. I clenched my fist in frustration. Yes, I was not a muscular, handsome guy. Why insult me? Disappointed, I went home. My parents were whispering in the kitchen. Dad was actively convincing Mom of something. I was wary, and then I heard a passage. Finally, we will get rich. I immediately remembered how Mom told me that, with the same words, Dad took everything out of the house, from the TV to the dishes. Because of his addiction, we became beggars. I rarely got new clothes, and I went to school in rags. Therefore, my classmates did not miss the opportunity to offend me, calling me a street rat. I always wanted to get out of poverty. After all, only then we will finally be happy. I sighed. Everything was in my hands. All night I studied vacancies, and in the morning I went to get a job as a waiter. Although the salary was low, I was hoping for a good tip, but even here, the boss asked skeptically if I had any experience. My palms were sweating as I quietly replied that I had never worked before. This was the end. I wouldn't be hired, but the boss chuckled. So be it. You'll go on probation. I broke into a smile. Got it. Finally, we would break out of poverty. I wanted to jump for joy and immediately ran home to tell Mom everything. We would be happy. But suddenly, my dad stopped me on the threshold, and he smiled enigmatically. He had a present for me. Present? Dad immediately handed me a large box. I hesitantly opened it and what, was this a joke? There was a woman's wig inside. Dad, are you completely out of your mind? There's no money and you're wasting it on nothing. I got angry and went to my room. I spent the next week at the cafe doing my best, staying late, trying to please the guests as much as possible. So I was constantly left with big tips. I was so happy about it. I hid everything I earned in the locker room, and soon a good amount of money accumulated there, enough to pay off the debts. After work, I returned home inspired and again saw Dad with burning eyes convincing Mom. This will definitely work. We'll finally have the money. I clenched my fists. Was he talking about the casino again? I immediately went up to them and shouted that we did not need any of his super earning schemes. I earned my money in an honest way, and now we had money. And just in time, in a week the payment period expired. We could lose our house. But Dad just chuckled in disbelief. Well, where's your honest money? I don't see them. I gritted my teeth. You would see tomorrow. In the morning, I went straight to work and to the locker room, but as soon as I got to the locker, my heart sank. The lock was open. It was impossible. I remembered that I locked the locker. With trembling hands, I opened the door. There was no stash. I immediately rummaged through all the things, but in vain. Despair washed over me. Someone stole everything. This wasn't supposed to go unpunished. I immediately went to the boss's office, but as soon as I told him, he snorted that it was my own fault. I was beginning to get a bit anxious. It was my money. The thief had to be found, but the boss just said that I was acting like a girl, and I looked the same, and I couldn't stand it anymore. How dare he say that? I shouted in anger that he was an idiot who didn't care about his employees. But he didn't seem to care about me at all. "You're fired," the boss gritted out. And only this phrase brought me back to reality. I frantically tried to justify myself, but the boss was adamant. This was the end. I lost my job and my money. What should I tell my parents? When I entered, Dad asked where the money was, and I just looked away in confusion. He understood everything and smiled triumphantly. Dad knew that there were no options other than his way of earning money. He added mockingly, "Son, go try on the dress. Soon you'll be wearing only them." What was he talking about? He was mocking me, but for some reason, Mom was hesitating. God, how much could she trust Dad? After all, he only promised to earn money and then he lost everything. I didn't say anything and went back to my room, slamming the door behind me. Couldn't sleep all night because of my nagging thoughts. Where could I get the money now? How could I pay for our debts? It seemed that all was lost and I was forever mired in poverty. I fell asleep only in the morning. Dad woke me up and told me that Mom needed to go to the hospital urgently to get medicine, and of course he did not have time because he was going to the next part-time job. I quickly packed up and went outside. Mom was already waiting for me at the bus stop, and together we boarded the bus. We drove longer than the usual, which seemed strange to me, and Mom was sitting there with a pained expression on her face. I gently took her hand and asked if everything was alright. Mom shuddered and looked at me rather sadly. She started to say something, but then just nodded and turned back to the window. When we arrived at the clinic, I was confused. It was modern, large, and not at all like an ordinary hospital. It was kind of weird. We went inside. It was a long drive, and I had to go to the bathroom. I asked Mom to wait for me in the hallway, and then I turned into the restroom. A strange feeling never left me for a second. I went to the sink to wash my face when someone called out to me. He was a young guy, but very feminine. His voice was high, his waist was narrow, and his features were more like a girl's. The guy asked, "Oh, were you a girl too?" The question confused me. What did he mean? Then the guy impatiently explained, "Well, are you here for a sex change operation, or it's already done?" What kind of sex change? I didn't understand anything. We weren't the usual. Wait. Then images flashed before my eyes. How Dad gave me a wig and hinted at dresses. How he persuaded Mom to do something. It meant I looked in horror at a guy who looked very feminine, and he had breasts. Yes, he was a girl. This was not a hospital, but a plastic surgery clinic. Did my parents want to change my sex? I ran into the corridor. No, I didn't agree to the operation. I had almost reached the exit when Dad appeared at the entrance and, seeing me, shouted, "Catch him!" Oh no, one of the orderlies blocked my path, and the other wrung my hands. I didn't even have the time to react, and they were already dragging me down the corridor. I tried to pull away, but just before I entered an office, I met my mom's eyes. She was almost crying, but she wasn't going to save me. What was going on? I started to struggle, but the orderlies were twice my size. They dragged me into the operating room and put me on the table. "I don't want to be a girl, wait!" I was shouting, but the doctor was already administering anesthesia. I felt my eyelids grow weak, and I struggled less every second. That's how I ended up in this operating room. I gave up and was sure that I would wake up as a girl. But at that moment, Mom ran into the operating room. With tears in her eyes, she screamed to stop the operation. Then suddenly, she clutched at her heart and fell into the floor. My stomach twisted with terror. "Mom, no!" I wanted so much to help her, but the anesthesia was already taking effect. Without realizing it, I blacked out. I came to myself in the ward and vaguely remembered what had happened. Oh my God, Mom! I immediately jumped, looking for her with my eyes. Was she alright? And then someone grabbed my arm. I whirled around. It was Mom. She was sitting next to me and her eyes were full of tears. Dad was there too, and he seemed a little bit down. I breathed a sigh of relief. "Mommy, I'm so glad you're alright." In response, he gently stroked my hair. "Son, I'm sorry," Mom sobbed. "Didn't mean to do this to you." And then I suddenly remembered everything. Relief was replaced by resentment. Why did they want to change my sex? Dad sighed. He'd met a man in a bar a few weeks ago. He said that he was looking for a beautiful girl, and if Dad brought him one, He would give the family a large sum of money. What kind of nonsense was this? What did that have to do with me? Then Dad hesitated. I was very feminine and beautiful. The only obstacle was my sex, which was just worth changing. He had a hard time getting Mom to do it. When she heard my screams, she knew she'd made a mistake. It was good that the operation was stopped. After all, the man turned out to be a fraud, and he was not going to give any money. With such a scheme, he simply found beautiful girls. I was in shock. So Dad wanted to make me a girl for the money? I couldn't believe it, but I couldn't be angry at my mom's tears. She had done so much for me. I sighed and smiled reassuringly. The main thing was that the parents realized their mistake. After we were discharged from the hospital, we went to the police station and told them in detail about this fraudster. He said that he had found a girl and would bring her to him. And now is the girl, wearing a wig and a new dress. However, the fraudster did not have the time to check out my beauty. Almost immediately, he got busted. And we, having received a substantial reward for the assistance of the police, immediately paid off our debts and paid for Mom's treatment. I always thought that we would only be happy with money, but now I realized that happiness is a family, people who will always be there, and not the wealth at all. Did you like this video? Then subscribe and like it. Support the channel, folks. Thank you so much.